Let's bring you this conversation now. Text messages, emojis and stickers all form part of the more modern modes of communication being used in today's digital era. However, without careful consideration, these may lead a person into serious trouble, especially at work. That's because many South African companies are increasingly using modern technology not only to enable remote work, but also to transmit immediate online messaging. With this comes particular pitfalls, including inappropriate communication, which may very well include sexual harassment. So we're asking the questions today, what are the legal provisions for this? Let's bring in our guest. Aslam Moolla is a labor lawyer who's the managing director at Legal Leaders and joins us now via our video link. Aslam, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for making time. I think just for the benefit of our viewer, what spurred on this conversation is the ongoing hearings into those sexual harassment claims by the Judicial Conduct Tribunal against a top judge in the Eastern Cape. We won't speak necessarily to the merits of that, but a big part of the cross-examination has been text messages that have been sent on WhatsApp. So let me just start by asking for a general sense of what you reckon the consequence of sending messages on WhatsApp can be in the context of work.
Good morning, Ayana. Thank you for having me this morning. The basic principle is don't say something over WhatsApp that you wouldn't say in person. And what you say over WhatsApp, that could be any social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, that forms documentary evidence against you. Employees have a misconception that what I do in my private time, after hours, if I send a WhatsApp about the company, disparaging remarks to a client, harassment to colleagues, that can still be used against you. So be very careful about what you are sending to people. Like I say, the golden rule is if you want, say it in person, don't say it over text. That's a simple rule to remember.
It's a lot to take in because WhatsApp, at least when it started, was actually a private social media platform for people to engage with family and friends outside of the work context. And it seems in a very quick space of time, it's become a professional platform too.
Correct. A lot of companies are setting up WhatsApp groups. The firm that I work in as well, there's a WhatsApp group. Now, questions arise about what can we post in that WhatsApp group? And furthermore, do I have to join the WhatsApp group? Can I be excused from joining the group? The reality is, at the end of the day, don't post anything in that group that can offend your colleagues, the name of the company, or talk bad. And most importantly, do not set up private groups where you gossip about colleagues. I've seen cases like that because if you are gossiping with someone privately, that person's going to take a screenshot and send it to the manager, and you're going to end up in trouble for that. Do you have to join the group? If everyone in the company is joining the group and it's necessary for business operations, you have to join the group. Can you be punished for leaving the group? It depends on the reason why you're leaving and how important that group is. So, for example, some companies have shift work, some companies have specific rosters that's put on the WhatsApp group, then you have to join. Also remember, don't put jokes, funny images and memes. It's a workplace group. Leave that for your friends and family.
Goodness. Okay, let's, I understand what you're saying about the workplace groups, but let's talk a bit more about those private groups. Part of what you've just mentioned is that if you're fine to be gossiping, for argument's sake, about your manager in those private groups and somebody takes a screenshot of that, you could land up in trouble. On what basis? I mean, there are people who might argue that this was a private conversation outside of the work context.
That's correct, Ayanda, and we're finding more of that happening today. In my experience, what happens in that scenario, you are gossiping about your manager, colleague, or favoritism, all of those things. Invariably, the person you are gossiping with, that person is going to share it with someone else. When that person comes to hear of it, usually it might not result in disciplinary hearing immediately, but now you will be victimized at work. They're going to micromanage you, check everything that you're doing at work, give you extra work, all those kind of things. So The simple rule, if you're not going to say something in person to someone, don't say it over WhatsApp. And if there's a genuine issue, file a grievance. A grievance is simply a complaint where you lay out exactly what the problem is and what the solution you are expecting. I've got tons and tons of videos online, YouTube, TikTok. Go watch them for free. Doesn't cost you anything. But don't spread gossip on WhatsApp. It can lead you into trouble.
A big part of the focus around those hearings I mentioned at the start of our conversation was around interpreting emoticons, so those laughing images, the thumbs up, for example, and fruits which are interpreted in different ways. And that's really the question I'm going to ask you. Those emojis seem very context-specific, sometimes cultural specific, and even generationally specific, if you know what I mean. And I wonder if you're finding in your line of work whether there's a general consensus of accepting what these messages may actually mean.
Well, Ayanda, emojis are symbols, pictures, which have certain meanings to them. If we are going to use that, we have to accept that there will be consequences for using that. Let me give you a classic example. If your manager tells you to show up at work tomorrow at 7 o'clock for an urgent meeting, and you give a thumbs up, what does that mean to you, just out of curiosity? Does it mean that you acknowledge the message, or you're going to show up at 7 o'clock?
It seems to me as an agreement.
That's how I see it as well. Yesterday, I had a debate with a colleague who said, no, that means I acknowledged his message. I never said I'm going to come at 7 o'clock. But you see how it's classic miscommunication. So unfortunately, we live in a digital era. You've got to be aware of how you say things at work. You know, a lot of people, look, employees have more protection in South Africa. I'm a labor lawyer now. I love what I do. I protect employees. We have in South Africa more rights to employees compared to other places in the world. But with the rights come responsibility. So be aware of what you say. If you give a thumbs up, you use certain fruit emojis and all those things, there are consequences to that. So be aware of what you are doing. Screenshots become evidence at CCMA, Labour Court, disciplinary hearing, as you discussed.
Sure, that's fascinating. I understand in the context of what you mentioned how the stakes might not be that high. You know, perhaps you wanted me here at 7 o'clock and I misinterpreted your thumbs up. However, how far can we stretch that? What do I mean? Can I get myself into a binding contract through a thumbs up, for example?
Very, very good question. There's two aspects I want to cover there, Ayanda. Number one, an argument could be raised by the company or the person who offered you the contract to say, by the fact that you gave a thumbs up, there was what we call a meeting of the minds. That's the test in South African law. Is there a meeting of the mind? Did my mind and Ayanda's mind agree on this? If there is, there's a contract. Too bad. So it's up for the judge to decide. The second issue, which we haven't canvassed on, but because of time, I want to get to it. It's very important. Blue ticks in a WhatsApp. If you have a blue tick, you've read a message. In my view, and I've used it in cases, that constitutes proof of acceptance of the message or receipt of the message. So if you have your blue ticks turned on, and for example, there's a notice of a disciplinary hearing taking place on Friday, the company sends you the hearing via email and via WhatsApp. You have blue ticked it via WhatsApp. You can't say that you never got the message, because now the blue ticks mean that it's been read. The company can screenshot it together with the time and show it as evidence at the CCMA. Do you agree with that, Ayanda?
I'm not sure if I do, because some people's blue ticks are switched off. Is that the advice?
Mine is off.
Okay, loud and clear. I didn't know that. That's fascinating stuff. All right. And you know, and I suppose it's not just WhatsApp, but all social media platforms have really forced us to think differently about how we even interact with the law. And as a parting shot, Aslam, I wonder to what extent you reckon companies should be a whole lot more explicit about the implications of using these platforms, especially for people's security of tenure?
Companies need to use these platforms to make their systems and their business more efficient. There's no doubt about it. Technology is a tool to help make our lives much better. For example, I'm in Durban having this interview with you in Johannesburg. Technology is facilitating that. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, we couldn't do that. I had to fly up to where the interview is taking place. So if the technology is there, it should be used to make the business more efficient, deliver a better service to customers. However, the converse is don't put too much of a duty on the employee. So, for example, the company cell phone you get, does it mean now the employee must be available all the time? That's not fair. With technology comes responsibility. The same goes for an employee as well. Be aware of what you're posting on Facebook, Instagram. Don't talk bad about customers, the business, your colleagues. Just don't do it. If you have something to say, go and talk to the person directly at work or raise a grievance. Don't raise it on those platforms. It's not appropriate.
Fascinating indeed. Aslam Moolla, thanks very much indeed for your time and insights. I think a lot of people were listening carefully and making notes. Aslam is a labor lawyer as well as the managing director at Legal Leaders. Once again, thanks very much indeed.